China cracks down on Christianity. We need to spend some time examining what's going on with believers over there in China. So let's take a moment to look at an article from BeliefNet. And the title of this article is China Cracks Down on Christianity by Demolishing Churches and Confiscating Bibles. This was written by Megan Bailey. So the ruling party in China is attempting to increase their control over religious freedom in the country, most recently by taking a crackdown on Christianity. In the country's province of Henan, which is one of the largest Christian populations in China, churches were raided and demolished. Bibles and holy books were confiscated, and new laws were established to monitor religious activities. One Christian named Zhuo described an incident in China where Chinese officials interrupted a church meeting and told everyone to leave. They then ordered church leaders to remove a cross, a Bible verse, and a painting of the Last Supper off of the wall. Zhuo didn't give his full name out of fear of government repercussions. And he is quoted as saying, "I've always prayed for our country's leaders and for our country to go stronger," he told the Associated Press. "They were never this severe before, not since I started to go to church back in the 80s. Why are they telling us to stop now?" The intensity of the government crackdowns have increased in recent months. Just this year, they have shut down hundreds of Christian house churches, seized Bibles, and forced e-commerce retailers to stop selling Bibles. They have prevented children from attending church in some areas and urged Christians in one location to replace posters of Jesus with pictures of President Xi Jinping and raided church meetings and interrogated hundreds of Christians from one congregation. To avoid becoming targets in the government campaign, many congregations are meeting in smaller groups in person and online. "We are trying to look more like a family that are here to chat and drink tea so that no one will report us to the police," said Enoch, a 22-year-old Christian in southern China. "I'm really afraid it will be shut down one day," said Enoch, one who converted to Christianity 3 years ago. "At the state church, I felt like I was listening to a lecture, but at the family church, people know about each other and love each other." All right, and all of this is, again, posted by BeliefNet with Megan Bailey, but it comes from the Associated Press. So as we look at this, we find that there are some serious things going on in the Christian world there in China, and it's something that we really need to pay attention to. We need to be praying for our brothers and sisters in Christ over there. I know within the Church of the Nazarene, we realize it's not an easy place to do ministry. Whether you're in the Church of the Nazarene or not, it's a creative access area, and it's very hard for the gospel to actually be placed there. Amanda, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I think I'm trying to organize my thoughts. When we hear something like this, it's really infuriating, and then we get kind of, I think, angrier because we realize how limited we are in helping the situation, because it is something that is happening so many thousands of miles away from us, and this is a whole regime that is doing this. But I think something for us to honestly consider is how we interact with China. And we may say, well, we don't interact with China. But when we support different industries and different merchandise that is feeding into regimes like this and feeding into systems and structures that continue this kind of abuse, both religiously and against people, we've got to understand that we do have a responsibility, even if that's not the country we live in. And especially as Christians, we are called to this high standard of loving one another, and that happens even in the way of what we purchase and what we don't. And I know that may be taking this a different place than you thought it would when we started this conversation, but there is evil in this world. And oftentimes it grows because people are apathetic to that evil. And we, as believers, as decent human beings, should do something as much as we can to make sure that that evil does not spread or harm others.
And this is not an ambiguous evil. This is something which we can verifiably verify. It's something we can actually go out and say, look, this is what it actually is. This is actually as evil as it
Yeah, we can point at it.
is.
We have evidence. Like,
Yeah,
this is not vague. This is quite literally a government that has decided to set itself up against the basic human rights of its citizens.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of us may not understand exactly what's going on in church in China, especially when people start talking about state church. So as we wrap up this, I want to share with you, spend the rest of our time talking about this, informing people what the state church in China actually is. Because there actually is an officially sanctioned church in China, and it's known as the Three Self Church, or officially as the Three Self Patriotic Movement. And you say three self, that sounds like three, that sounds a bit like Trinity or the Triune God, but it actually is not. Three Self stands for self-support, self-governance, and self-propagation. And this means that they are completely detached from any foreign influence in the church. They're completely detached from any foreign influence in terms of ideological influence or structure, and it is only controlled there within China. And it emerged in the 1950s, but the Chinese government actually controls the messages which are preached, they control the scriptures which people have, and they have the ability to edit and manipulate all of this stuff. And that is very, very dangerous. The official church in China, though it started around 1950, it was actually made illegal in around 1966 and then reopened in 1979. The reason why that happened was in the Cultural Revolution, they wanted to make all churches illegal. They wanted to completely crush Christianity, but they found that they could not, that the church was still surviving in people's homes. So in order to get in front of that, they reopened the Three Self Church, and they tried to make this the official church so they could be ahead of the problem and control it and regulate it. But it seems now that even as we speak, they are looking more and more to crush the church. So I'll let Amanda send us some thoughts as we end this conversation, but we must keep our brothers and sisters in Christ in prayer. There are a lot of Christians in China. One more thought before I let Amanda have her final thoughts on this. There's somewhere between 38 and 49 million people involved in the state church, the Three Self Church, but then there's somewhere around 240 million or more, because it's really hard to find any information or numbers on this, of Christians who are there that are not part of the Three Self Church.
Yes, and I think that's something to keep in mind as China has gone through all these different movements of allowing churches, not allowing churches, allowing certain churches and things like that. Every time outside sources have been able to kind of glean, and we really can't get accurate numbers because we just don't know. It's so secretive, and people are trying to protect themselves. We don't know an accurate number of how many people are Christians. But every time they've gone into these dark places that have been closed off to the gospel, they have realized that the gospel is still spreading, regardless of what these powers have been, these political powers have been trying to do. And I think that is something we all should be reminded of. Christianity has outlasted empire after empire, after government, after regime. And it will continue to outlast whatever foolishness and evil this world brings.
Nothing more can be said. We'll end it there.